Hi, and welcome back to a new season of the CI Diaries podcast. You may notice that things have changed a little bit. I am alone this season. Christy has a lot of things going on and doesn't have time to be on all the time, but she has agreed to be a guest with us. Thank you to Wayside Publishing for sponsoring this podcast. And thank you for watching and listening and being back here again to do a new season with me, Carrie Toth. I am a teacher in rural Southern Illinois. This is my 30th teaching year. After this year, I have 4 years left until retirement, so I'm getting very nostalgic. Everything that happens at school, I think, wow, there's not much more time. That's not going to happen very many more times. But one thing that I never seem to have a shortage of are things that fail in my classroom. And I know people talk a lot about their successes, and I am one too, to share activities that work really well in my classroom. But the truth, the hard truth, is that there are a lot of things that don't work, and there are a lot of different levels that things don't work on. So I would like to talk about how there's a hashtag on social media, highlight reel, but not REEL, like your best plays in the classroom, highlight reel, REAL, about highlights of things that really happen in real classrooms, and how as teachers do we take those events in? How do we overcome those activities or those failed lessons, or just the days when we feel like things did not go right? So our topic today is, what do I do when my lesson fails, when my whole activity fails, when a reader is failing? We're going to look at a lot of levels and what that failure looks like. So I would say the first place that I would start would be just at the activity level, because I think that happens to us most often. We have a really great idea for an activity, but when we try to put it into practice in the classroom, that activity does not work out exactly like we thought it was going to. So, for example, I think it was 2 weeks ago in my classroom, I got these little slingshots with little emoji characters on them. And I thought, we are going to play a game where they tried to shoot this emoji character. We were reading, and I wanted to review what we were reading. So I thought, they'll answer a comprehension question. If they get the comprehension question correct in their group, they will shoot their little emoji character, and it will land on one of these target scores. And then that's how many points their team will get. So I made them variable, anywhere from 62 points in a teeny tiny circle to 5 points to 1 point that filled up almost the whole page. What I had not foreseen, we did this in 4 of my classes that day. What I had not foreseen was that in all 4 classes, 0 groups scored any points. They could not shoot that slingshot. The groups were rotating student to student. So just when one person would have a shot and feel like, oh, I didn't pull it back far enough, or I angled too far down, they didn't get the next shot. So the next kid would come up, and they had no experience using the slingshot, so they wouldn't make it. And so it became like a joke. Like, this is the worst game we've ever played, because we're all getting questions right, but none of us have a score. So I could have thrown that game out. Like, after the first hour, I could have opted to go to a different game. And that is absolutely a fine choice. If you're in the middle of a game and you can see there's nobody scoring any points, if they seem frustrated, definitely shift gears. I could have shifted to where they just were writing their answers down on their whiteboards, and everybody that got it right got a point. Or I could have taken Martina Bex's game of trash get ball and then let them shoot for points after they got the question right. But mine were not super frustrated about it. The activity obviously wasn't going well, but I think they thought that was kind of funny that my activity was failing, and so they enjoyed playing along with it. So I think that as I went through the day, the word was on the street that we were playing a game and nobody could score any points in it. So the other classes came in more and more interested in trying to score points, and still they couldn't. So finally, the last class of the day said, well, maybe you could put out your big hula hoops and put the scores in the center of that. And then if you land in a hula hoop, you get like 1 point. And then if you land on the paper, you get 2 points. And then if you land on the actual number, you get that number of points. And I thought, wow, that's the secret. So next time, we're not going to totally scrap this activity. It was definitely a failure on day one, but I think that's an example of how you can take a game and maybe have an adaptation to try if the kids like it. Sometimes they just don't like it. Sometimes there are games that they're not fond of. And so those you may just decide to scrap, may decide to try and rewrite the rules. One of the games that I love to play with them after reading is called Cupside Down. There's a blog post or two about it online, but Cupside Down, they have solo cups and they're trying to turn the direction of other teams' cups to make them lose. I have some kids that cannot handle that chaos. So I might be able to play Cupside Down in second hour and eighth hour, but in fifth hour, they just get too wild. So I can't play it in that class. So there are ways that an activity can fail in 1 hour that you can adapt. I just play a more sit down version where they get the cups and they build a tower with them, a la Nellie Hughes, instead, because they need to be able to sit down. And also you may have activities that fail because they're quiet. Sometimes if I have a follow-up activity that doesn't keep kids' hands moving, the kids that are fast get bored because they're done early, or the kids that don't understand have more difficulty doing things on their own. They might get bored because they don't know what to do, so they're not filling out the activities. So having hands-on things can also, for example, an ordering activity. I sometimes do ordering activities where kids have to put the events together as a paper chain. And for some reason, and then I let them work in groups of 2 because they have to read and then glue them together to make their chain. But for some reason, when they see a big long list of events, it's very hard for them to order them. But when they have manipulatives, they're able to go, okay, I know these 2 events go by each other and these 2 events. So they can sort of move them and visually represent the order of the story, and it makes them more focused and they get more into the activity. But sometimes it's not just an activity. Sometimes it's a whole lesson that's failing. I did a really fun unit on farming last year with my level 4 class. They responded so well to a unit like on corn, on native corn versus GMO corn. We had a great time studying this, but my Spanish 4 this year are not interested in that unit. I don't have as many kids who are involved in FFA, as many kids who have families who are farmers. It's not hitting with them. And so we're going to explore some other unit ideas, because I just think this unit, if they don't connect with it, they aren't going to have as meaningful a time in their acquisition. And what I really want is for their acquisition of language to also be engaging. I want them to be excited about the topics that we're talking about. So for me, this unit is not succeeding right now. So we are actually throwing out a whole unit that is not working out, and in favor of something that is more their cup of tea. I feel like readers, a lot of teachers use readers in the classroom. Readers are the same way. I can get super excited about the topic of a reader, and then when I start to read it with my class, they might not be quite so excited. I've also found that longer readers are challenging to kids because you're spending so much time reading through 15 or 16 chapters of a reader. I think back to my earliest book, La Hija del Sastre, and that book has 16 chapters, and it is just a marathon to get kids through that. So I have classes sometimes that are so into the story that they're willing to go 16 chapters deep with me into the story of La Hija del Sastre. I have other classes that's attention spans are not nearly that long, and they really need a reader that's about 10 chapters because we need to get in, read a story, get great cultural information, and then get back out of the reading unit. They just need a lot of change and variety. And so don't be afraid to throw out a reader if it is not engaging for your students. And sometimes it's engaging for first hour and not for fifth hour. I honestly think don't be afraid to get rid of the reader for the fifth hour kids and keep it for the first hour kids. Do a different story. It doesn't even have to be the same cultural topic. Do a totally different story that fits in their level. It's not going to hurt them one bit if they have two different stories. You're actually going to create an environment where they really feel like they have some ownership of what they're learning. And nothing makes you more interested in producing language than having some ownership over what it is that you study and are able to talk about. So I think what I'm saying is don't be afraid no matter what it is. If it's a simple one day, if it is an activity that you're doing for 20 minutes, if it's a unit that you were planning for 3 weeks, or if it's a reader, don't be afraid to change course, to just say, hey, this isn't hitting with you guys. I can see that, and I want to do something that connects with you. It's okay to tell them that this has been failing. That's real life. Our kids are very different people, even from each other. My Spanish 3 first hour and my Spanish 3 sixth hour are so completely different that I feel like we're going to be doing a lot of things this year that are different for level or different for first hour than for sixth hour, just because I want to try to prevent, where possible, the failure of a topic that I think will be interesting to them. And last, I know that some of you, I've actually talked to several people this year that said, I have this one class, or I have all my classes where it feels like everything is failing. And if you're new to teaching with a proficiency-based method or driving toward acquisition, I know that that can be frustrating. When I started teaching for proficiency, I was not ready yet to give up the curriculum that I had been using, because it gave me a roadmap of where I was going to go. And even though the roadmap wasn't any kind of a scientifically proven way for students to learn more language or to become fluent faster, it was an anchor to hold me in the churning water of trying something new. And so I was afraid I would teach my vocabulary through fun stories and through cute videos, but then I would go straight back to the exact grammar for the unit, and a kid would say, but how do I say I went to whatever? Well, don't worry about that. Right now you have all of these boot verbs to memorize. And so I wasn't looking at it through the lens of these kids really want to use language to communicate. So it was failing, but I wasn't quite ready to accept that it was failing. The next year, when I did accept that the way I was teaching them grammar was failing, I had some holdouts, a lot of holdouts in the older classes. My freshmen would never have thought to ask for grammar worksheets, but my older kids liked that familiar, easy, checkout kind of work. When you're teaching students to get them to acquire language, they have to be active. They have to be listening. They have to be paying attention in class. They can't be on their phone, and there's a lot required of them as far as being present with you. When you have worksheets that you're giving out at the end of every hour, it's different. They can, pay attention for the lesson part and then check out for the rest of the hour. And so for me, the first 3 years of teaching for proficiency were the hardest, because the kids that had the easiness of worksheets, some of them pushed back, and not all of them. Most kids really loved it, but the ones that are pushing back a lot of times are kids that like to stir up other kids, and they can cause everybody to feel like they're pushing back. And so it was a little bit of a hard transition. But now that I'm years in, I would never go back to the other way, because my students didn't feel comfortable and confident using language. And so many kids are not strong readers or are not strong spellers. And I was taking off points if they couldn't read and spell correctly. When I look at the kids that I taught in the first 15 years of my career, I feel like in a lot of ways I failed them, because I made them feel like they were not good at learning languages. And the truth was, I just didn't know a lot about how people learn languages. I didn't understand the process of acquiring a second language. And so I didn't serve them as well as I could have. But in the last 15 years, I've really been working to use a lot of language in the classroom and make sure that they're comfortable hearing language, and make sure that they don't feel like every mistake is a strike against them, because that's how we grow from novice to intermediate, through failure. If you try to say something and someone doesn't understand it, it's a failure, yes, but it's also a stepping stone, because okay, that didn't work. Let me try another way to say it. If we're always correcting their mistakes, they're a little nervous to try other ways to say it. So I think that as far as my students go, they have gotten a lot better since I started letting them fail as well as myself. And there's something to be said about that. I think as teachers, we sometimes want to hide when an activity is failing, or when a lesson's failing, or we feel like we have to be the chief expert that always, never makes any mistakes and always knows everything perfect in the classroom and knows every word. Let your students see that you're not perfect. They're not going to be perfect, and they're going to be more comfortable not being perfect if they know that you also accept the fact that you are not being perfect. So failure is okay. I guess I want you to just think of it as failure as part of the process. As we try to find the activities that are going to be successful, that are going to be our students' favorites, that are going to make kids excited to come to class and retain material for the long term and become more proficient speakers, there are going to be ups and downs. There are going to be things that they don't love. There are going to be groups that love everything and groups that hate everything. And to keep our stamina and to keep coming back into the classroom, we have to just learn to accept that failure is part of the highlight reel, REAL. We can't be perfect all the time, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing for students to see you as a normal human that makes mistakes, that doesn't do everything just right. And for other teachers as well. We have a lot of colleagues who are new teachers, who are, first 5 years of service teachers. They need to see older teachers still saying, hey, I tried this and it didn't work, but here's what I'm going to do differently. That's reflective practice. Or I tried this and it didn't work, and I don't think there's anything I could do differently to make it work. Again, reflective practice, stopping and thinking about what you would do differently, or if you could do anything differently. So I hope that this helps you as you go into the Christmas season, the holiday season, and that you are not afraid to fail, and to also, like, you're failing forward, trying to find ways to use that failure to grow and to reflect in your classroom. Thank you for joining me for our start of the new season, and I will see you back again soon with another topic. Bye-bye.